Alright, at number 12, we have Yugi and Taya from Yugioh. Now you might say, well, don't you mean Taya and the Pharaoh? It's both ways. You see, especially when you go into the third season and then not third season, whatever season it is, because when you look at Yu-Gi-Oh, you don't know exactly how many seasons they go with. So, technically, if you, let's say, go into the third season somewhat, you kind of really, well, in the second season, of course, but mostly like in the third season. And, well, basically mostly through the final couple of seasons, you kind of see that Taya really is showing how her feelings for Yugi and mostly the Pharaoh are starting to surface finally. Are starting to be really showcased. And if you're lucky enough to watch the uncut version of these episodes in these seasons, in these final few seasons, you kind of get that idea because there are a few scenes in the uncut version that, from what I've seen online, kind of show that Taya is in love with Yugi or in love with the Pharaoh, so that so that you could basically tell. You could basically tell just by looking at those uncut versions, and you don't even have to see the uncut either. I mean, you can even watch the American version, the American dub, if you will, and it's clear as day basically there as well. So, but yeah, it's really, again though, like I said, it really gets emphasized. It really gets emphasized if you will, in these final few seasons. It really does. I mean, especially if you like comedy and all that, especially gets emphasized a lot when Rebecca shows back up, when Rebecca Hawkins shows back up, declares Yugi as her boyfriend, and if that's not enough to really tick Taya off, then you have this tournament going on. Where you have this one girl apparently crushing on Yugi, this other girl crushing on Yugi, and that ticks Taya off even more. So again, and here's the facts, folks. It's not just and here's the deal, folks. It's not just the fact that this girl. I mean, it's not just the fact that Taya gets jealous over the fact that other girls are swooning over Yugi, whether the Pharaoh in control or not. It basically shows you that Taya doesn't want anybody getting in the way between her and her chances with the Pharaoh or her chances with Yugi. And like I said, you take a look at how she reacts, especially in the final season, and especially in the final episodes, which are known as the final duel. You kind of get the idea there as well. that, and again, you kind of get the idea there as well. Alright, at number 11 here, we have Riff-Raff and Cleo from Heathcliff and the Cadillac Cats, mostly the Cadillac Cats section of the show. And the one thing I will say about Riff-Raff and Cleo in this one is this is a very dedicated couple, if you will. I mean, you know, as crazy as that sounds, they're very dedicated to each other. Because, you know, because it's like no matter, because it's almost like no matter what Riff-Raff, what kind of schemes and ideas Riff-Raff comes up with, Cleo still supports him most of the time. I mean, there are several, if you will, instances. There are several instances, if you will, that Riff-Raff will come up with some crazy scheme, or he'll end up being infatuated with another female cat, that you think Cleo would just leave him because of that, or just say, enough's enough, I'm done, right? But she doesn't. It's like the next episode, she's back with him. And then here's another thing. There's an episode where Riff-Raff thinks he's going to lose Cleo to this this cook, if you will, this French cook, if you will, whatever. And he goes through all these measures, and yet he finds out that it doesn't matter to her if he's a good cook or he's not a good cook. It's only matters, the thing is, she likes being around him. She likes to hang out with him. And for someone like Riff-Raff, that's enough. That is enough for him to, you know, accept. So basically you have someone like Cleo basically telling Riff-Raff, hey, it doesn't matter if you're a good cook or not, I like being with you. So that's pretty interesting. That's pretty interesting. And again, though, you would think, out of all the schemes he comes up with, alright, at number 10, this is basically sort of in the comic book range, if you will, but it's actually junior graphic novels, because this is the only place you see this character. If you will, is in the junior. This is the only place you see this character, is in the junior graphic novels of these books. And of course, who I'm talking about at number 10 is none other than Bonnie Brown and Brother Bear. Now, in case you don't know who Bonnie Brown is, she was introduced into the Berenstain Bear franchise back in the mid-90s as part of the how do you put it? Basically, they're known as kind of like junior graphic novels, if you will. They're sort of like junior graphic novels. She was introduced into the Berenstain Bears line then in the book called New Girl in Town, and thus she became the love interest of Brother. And again, like I said, thus she became the love interest of a Brother back in I said back in the graphic. Now I'm trying to look it up here. Can you believe somebody actually has a Wicca on the Berenstein Bears? Doesn't surprise me. But again, she was introduced in the Berenstein Bears and New Girl in Town, which, like I said, was a. I'm trying to find it here. It was a chapter book. That's what it was. It was known as the Berenstein Bear chapter books. Basically, junior graphic novels. And she was introduced to New Girl in Town, and she'd become not just the best friend of Brother, but sort of it was established at the time that she became the love interest. Now, basically the premise of that issue was sort of, not just that issue, but of that story, of her introduction, was sort of like a Romeo, was basically based off Romeo and Juliet. You see, basically what happened was that there was a situation in Beartown, if you will, where the Bear Clan and the Grizzly Clan were kind of separated due to something happening. I got to reread the book again. But they were separated, and what was funny about this is Brother is on the bear side, right? Bonnie is on the grizzly side. So they basically become the Romeo and Juliet in a real life, almost Romeo and Juliet like setting. They become that. And so basically they're stuck in the middle. And why are they stuck in the middle? Well, because when Bonnie gets first introduced, she gets introduced, I think, before, just a little bit before school starts, right? She gets introduced onto the scene a little bit before school starts, and a little before school starts, and basically like I said, she basically, in the story, basically, she gets introduced right as all the kids are getting ready for school, at school, getting ready to go in for classes, and ironically, she ends up, sorry about that, my bird, sorry about that, the bird loves to be uncontented. Sorry about that, the bird loves to have attention there. Basically, like I said, but basically, like I was saying, she gets introduced at the beginning of the book. Not really right at the beginning, but basically she gets introduced in one of the chapters. I think it's the first or second chapter or something like that. She gets introduced during recess. Well, not during recess, but again, before school starts. And not only is she introduced, right before school starts, and almost every cub knows who she is. And Brother, I think, it's the first time he's ever seen her. Brother becomes, and here's the unique thing about the story. Brother didn't really like girls. He didn't like all the romantic stuff about girls. I mean, he didn't mind having female friends, if you will, or female best friends. Like there was this one girl that, liked him, and he kind of liked her, but not in that romantic way. So So basically, what happens is Bonnie shows up, and boom, those feelings that brother says, hey, I'm never going to have those kind of feelings. Those feelings start to swell up in him, and all of a sudden, he starts crushing on Bonnie Brown. Literally, he does. He ends up crushing on Bonnie Brown to the point that, ironically enough, she ends up in his class, and he gets embarrassed because, one, not only does she end up in his class, she ends up sitting right next to him. So, basically, long story short, they develop a real good friendship with each other, and if not something that sparks more than that, especially with the whole Romeo and Juliet like setting. But it also goes on to basically it basically shows you that throughout the run of the books, that both of them really care about each other probably more than just as friends. That they really care about each other more than probably just as friends. Maybe that they care about each other on the level of boyfriend-girlfriend, because there are several stories. In fact, there's like 2 stories later where brother gets jealous of Bonnie having to go out with somebody even though she doesn't want to. And Bonnie gets... At number 9, we have... And it's going to be hard to believe this. We have Raphael and Ninjara from the Archie comic books run of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now you might say, well, where's Mona Lisa? Well, I will say this about Mona Lisa: unless she comes back in the 2K12 to present series of Nickelodeon's version, unless she comes back, which a lot of people are hoping she does. And they kind of reestablish in this version that she and Raph are going to be together. Unless they can, unless that happens, I will say this real quickly. Her being introduced in Raphael Meets His Match in the original series had the potential of really establishing her as a on and off character. Basically a character that comes in every now and then, like let's say a Casey Jones or something like that. Or even as a reoccurring character, but still that didn't happen. She was a one-shot deal. There you go. But Ninjara here, Yumiko, was definitely someone that was in for the long haul, or was supposed to be obviously in for the long haul, because she was introduced basically in the final pages, I believe, of issue 28, and really started to get her foot in the door as soon as it came to issue 29. And it's almost like from issue 29 all the way up to about issue 70, I believe, it was firmly established, 70, 71, it was firmly established that she and Raphael were going to be a couple. And, what a couple they made. I mean, apparently, obviously, when the comic was being done by Archie Comics, someone working on the comic at that time, decided, I guess, with Archie Comics' permission, and I guess with the okay from Peter Laird and Kevin Eastman, that, hey, go ahead and add this female character to the team. Because even though a lot of people thought she was going to be coming to the animated series, which ironically, there was a pitch to do a Mighty Mutant Animals series, animated series, where she was going to be in it as a main character. Even though that was pitched, it never came to fruition. But still, the obvious idea was to say, hey, here's a female character that can fight as good as the turtles can, is on that same level as being a turtle, being one of the turtles. I mean, basically, here's somebody that, even though she will have a relationship with basically the hothead of the group in Raphael, here's someone that can hold her own, is on equal footing with them when it comes to fighting. And throughout the 40 plus issues she is around, she is basically around for about 43 issues, if you think about it. 43 issues, 1 or 2 48-page specials. So she's around. So she's almost around for about 45 issues altogether during this run. And she makes the most of it, and she kind of compliments Raphael in the sense that she's kind of like, she can get angry, she can get mad, but she's sort of like that calming, soothing voice that needs to be around Raphael. They're like, hey, look, calm down, keep your cool, da-da-da-da-da-da, you know, just don't let anything get to you. You know, and what's ironic about it is it's this kind of like this mysterious dark side of Raphael is what attracts her to him. If you read like one of the first few issues, some of the first few issues she's in, it's that dark, mysterious side that attracts her to Raphael. So basically it's like she's attracted to it because maybe it's a side that she could help soothe and calm down, because of the fact that she used to be on the side of evil until she found out, hey, I'm being manipulated, I'm being used here. This is not what I signed up with. So basically, basically from issue 29 on becomes a member of the team, and we, along with Raphael, find out a little bit more about her. And again, this is what made them a very unique couple. Raphael, despite being a hothead, was willing to go with Ninjara to her homeland. Basically, he, along with the rest of us, finds out that there is more than just other humanoid, that they find out there are more humanoid fox people like her around. So he wants to go and find out exactly, what's going on. Why her brother, we do meet her brother, shows up out of nowhere. We find out that he shows up out of nowhere because he gets instructions sent to him by his sister. So, she's still learning a lot too. So that's a good thing about the character and her relationship with Raphael. That even though Raphael could be a hothead, even he knows, hey, you just can't hand out, directions to our lair, or where you're now living with us at the lair, just to anybody. So basically the point is both kind of complement each other in a sense. But the other thing I did like about it was you kind of sense that they were destined to be with each other. You knew they were going to be with each other for a while, but because the comic was coming to an end, obviously Archie Comics was losing its license to the comics. Because the comic was coming to an end, I think it was Stephen Murphy who came up with her. One of the guys that came up with her. Decided, along with the writing staff, to just write her out of the book. Now, they didn't write her out of the book by saying, okay, we're going to kill her off. Pew! She dead. No. they decided, let's go kind of almost in a real life situation. Let's go in a real world situation when it comes to relationships. And basically what they did, and I know I don't like it, I know a lot of other fans don't like it, but basically because the book was ending and they needed to take her out of the book before it officially ended, they did this thing called Moon Eyes, to where from almost a real world perspective, she started to fall out of love with Raphael. And believe it or not, this is actually foreseen by the future Raphael in an issue down the line where he's telling Ninjara, look, you got to give us a second chance. You know, I don't want us to fall apart. You got to give us a second chance, blah, blah, blah. And the question is still is risen out there, is would she, or did she give them a second chance? Because then we see, because in the future, we see a character very similar to her called Mezcal, who a lot of people say is a different character, but some might even say is Ninjara. Ninjara that was, basically, or some might say is Ninjara. She was just brought in, basically, from the past. They basically, like, sometime in the past, sometime in the future, Raphael and Donnie brought Ninjara into the future, and so that no one would be confused, they would say, okay, let's change your name to Mezcal. That's what some people, even myself, think at times, even though there are others that say it's a different character entirely, and I won't argue that either, but it's just kind of strange how both look alike. So, but anyway, number 8 on the list, I have to go with Max and Roxanne from a Goofy movie. Now, I know we didn't see Roxanne in the second movie, the extremely goofy movie. Some people pretty much think they saw her, but with a new hairstyle and stuff, and I don't think so. But we did see her return in Max's Embarrassing Date episode of House of Mouse, so we can count them as canon, if you will. But then again, you might say, oh well, he was dating this other girl in the Christmas one. Yeah, you might. You could say that they did that, but that's sort of like the norm at times in college. It's like, you'll probably break off the relationship just temporarily because you don't know what's going to happen. But, as we've seen before, sometimes you'll end up getting back together afterwards or whatever. Even though sometimes that's mostly in fairy tale, if you know what I mean, in fiction. But sometimes that does happen in real life. But Max and Roxanne, this is a very cute couple that Disney did. I mean, for a Goofy movie being the extension, of Goof Troop, it's really kind of cool. I mean, here you have, basically the way they meet is they're both in the final days of the freshman year of high school. So, and out of all the girls in the school there, Max has his eyes set on her, and what's surprising is when they finally do get to know each other, which is like, it basically starts out with her helping him off the ground because he accidentally falls after singing after today's song concludes. He kind of trips and falls down the bleachers onto the ground, and she helps him up. So he kind of likes her. She starts to like him, and the reason she starts to like him is because of the laugh he inherits from his dad. So, and it's really cool, and you can kind of tell how caring, how much Max likes her, and how much he loves her, because he's willing to basically break the rules at school, which normally he probably wouldn't do, just to impress her by dressing up like the Powerline character. Disrupting an assembly, and all of that, an assembly on the last day of school, so it's really kind of cool. And I like how the fact that even after he does all that and he gets in trouble for it, that as she's going into the school office to drop off some books and all that with her friend Stacy, that she sees him there, and then that instead of being embarrassed about what he did to try to impress her, instead she accepts it, and she accepts it and everything, and she even agrees to go out with him to she even agrees to be his date for the party that her friend's putting on, the Powerline concert party. And when that goes awry, basically thanks to his dad's interference and misunderstanding of what's going on, he basically has to go the distance. He basically has to do something to really show that he cares about this girl. And what does he do? Well, first of all, he's got to call off the date, but then says, hey. But then he has, again, to show you how much he wants to be with her, he says, but I got better news. I'm going to end up being at the concert. And she accepts this. She believes this. And of course he has to fulfill that obligation, and he does, after a series of misadventures and misunderstandings and forgiveness with him and his dad. He does fulfill that promise, does go to the concert, does end up on stage with the Powerline character. And then, to top that all off, to show how much she likes him and cares about him, she even, you would think that after he would show up, tell her the truth, that she'd be like, okay, I understand, I don't like somebody that does that to me, so, if we'll just be friends, that's fine. Okay, guys, at number 7, and I do apologize for the delay, if you will. I mean, I know visually you can't really see what I'm talking about because this is nothing but audio. But basically, it's about 7:22 a.m. this Thursday morning, and it's kind of been about a couple of 8 hours, 12 hours in between the last couple and this couple that's coming up at number 7. And at number 7, we have Bart and Lisa Raccoon. Now, Bart and Lisa, this is a couple, if you will, that it actually is sprang out, actually was developed and sprang out of the Raccoons animated series, which was created by Kevin Gills all the way back in 1980. That's right. Kevin Gills actually created this franchise back in 1980, and it ran for about 11 to 12 years. So, for 9 of those 11 years, the main romantic couplings, the main romantic pairings in the Raccoon series were Bert's best friends, Ralph and Melissa, who were married. Ralph and Melissa Raccoon, who were married. And his best buddy, his best friend, if you will, Cedric, and his other friend, Sophia, which were both anteaters or aardvarks or whatever you want to call them. So, yeah, those are the main couplings, Ralph and Melissa, Cedric, and Sophia. But that all changed in 1989 in the episode Spring Fever. Now, before this, we were introduced to Ralph and Melissa's nephew, Bentley. And we found out that Bentley lived in the city along with his family, lived in the big city along with his family. And Bentley would come for visits every now and then. Well, in this episode, he doesn't come alone to visit Ralph, Melissa, and Bert. No, he brings along his sister, who's very statuesque size, if you will. In fact, she's the biggest raccoon character, if you think about it, in the series, among the main cast. And of course, once Bart sees her, he falls head over heels for her. And you can kind of see a little bit of an attraction she would have towards him. Because as she's talking to Ralph and Melissa, and they're asking how her trip was on the train, she says, oh, it was fun. And she's looking back at Bart when she says that. So, yeah, you kind of get the idea that Kevin Gills was basically going to put these two together. And she does make a comeback a year later. She only appears in this one episode in 89, but then she comes back a year later. Because her family is moving into the Evergreen Forest because her father's taking a job at a local TV station. So, by moving back to the Evergreen Forest, she ends up being able to spend time more often with Bart. She hangs out with him, they play sports together, sometimes they get a little competitive with each other, but overall, they're there for each other. I mean, heck, Bart and Cedric, I think more on the behest of Bart, allow Lisa to be part of the clubhouse. In other words, hang out at the clubhouse, if you will. Be a club member. And then, in the last episode, which is called Gold for the Gold, at the very end, you kind of see, well, towards the end, towards the climax, the racing triathlon climax, and basically towards the end, you kind of see that they're starting to go from being friends to probably being more than that. You kind of get that idea. Now, even though that's the last episode and nothing's capitalized on afterwards, Kevin Gills basically gives you the idea that Bart and Lisa were going to end up together. Alright, number 6, folks, is from the 1993 Disney animated series Disney's Bonkers. And of course, I'm talking about Bonkers and Fawn. Now, actually, if you think about it, Bonkers and Fawn's relationship established itself in 1992. Not on the small screen, but on the big screen in the animated featurette Pedal to the Metal, which was aired or shown before the Three Ninjas movie. Now, what's so unique about this relationship between the two is, Bonkers could be as wacky as any character, Looney Tune-wise or Disney-wise, that you can think of. He could be as wacky, as annoying at times in the eyes of some, uncontrollable, basically living up to his name. But yet, here you have Fawn Deer, that no matter what he does, no matter how annoying, how out of control, no matter how annoying, how out of control, how undirective, things can get for him, she still cares about him very much. I mean, heck, even in the short where he portrayed Sherlock Bonkers, even after he basically took a swipe of jelly that was left on her neck by his finger, just swiped it off, and it kind of annoyed her. And it kind of annoyed her a little bit. Still, she let that go. It's things like that make this pairing very good. It makes it a very good pairing, because here you have Bonkers that anytime he sees Fawn, whether it's during his animated shorts, whether it's in one of my personal favorite episodes, Casa Bonkers, whatever. Here you have, Bonkers willing to do whatever it takes to be with Fawn, to make Fawn happy. And yet here you have Fawn Deer that's basically hey, she'll accept Bonkers for who he is. It doesn't matter how wacky he gets, how out of control and annoying at times he might get. She loves him. She basically loves him, and there's no doubt about that, for who he is. She loves him for who he is. She accepts him for who he is. I mean, heck, in the pilot episode, Going Bonkers, as though walking down the sidewalk after they're fired from Wacky Toon Studios, as they're walking down the sidewalk in the rain, she is the first one to tell Bonkers that they'll stand by her, that they will stand by him. Yeah, she's the first one that says it. And then, after everybody is seemingly kidnapped, she stops for a second before she's kidnapped. But she stops, looks around, and she gets this look on her face like, you know, she's upset. Like, she's annoyed that like, she kind of gets this look on her face like, you know, she's upset. And if you look at that expression before she's kidnapped, it's almost like a look of not just annoyance, but of upsetness, of being upset at possibly the fact that everybody's just walked out on Bonkers. That after she says, "Oh, we'll stick by you," they walk out on him. And that, you kind of, like I said, and this is before she gets kidnapped. She kind of has that look on her face, like, okay, you know, just upset, like, you know, you sons of, you know what. But that apparently wasn't the case. But the point is, here you have a character that, to me, is very dedicated to Bonkers. You know, not just as a best friend, but as a boyfriend. She's very dedicated to him. She loves him for who he is, and he loves her for who she is, and is willing to do whatever he has to make her happy. I mean, heck, if you go to Raw Tunage, if you watch some Raw Tunage episodes, in fact, I think there's an episode, or at least there's the, I think you could say the cutaway scenes of an episode of Raw Tunage where Bonkers is the host, and the main objective in his story within the Raw Tunage thing as the host is to get a television to Fawn Deers. And he's doing whatever it takes to get it to her. And when she shows up at the beginning of that episode, you can kind of tell that she likes him for who he is, because he's basically saying, you know, how about this one? Because basically here he is showing her all these TVs, you know, kind of, you know, being himself, and she likes that about him. She's laughing, she's giggling about it. And it's not a make fun of mocking giggle. It's a gentle, kind, attractive, like, hey, this guy is pretty, like, hey, this guy's kind of cool, kind of attraction. So that to me really emphasizes how cool this couple is and how worthy they are of being on this Valentine's Day countdown list of animated couples, animated comic book couples, how dedicated they are. Because, I mean, and take a look at this. Take a look at this. There's an issue of Disney Adventures that I have with a Bonkers story called Nose on the Run. And this was a story that I've been wanting to get for a while, and I finally got it, believe it or not, through Amazon.com. And basically, here's Bonkers he's nervous about asking Fawn, and you would think after he kind of gets his advice from Fall Apart and tries to act all suave and everything on the phone and ask her, you know, she's asking him, okay, what happened to your verbs? And you would think with him acting like Mr. Joe McCool, if you know what I mean, he kind of simmers down and says, well, I was just wondering if you wanted to go. And she says yes. And she even says at the end of the story that not to be disappointed that he could not find Fall Apart Rabbit's nose, because his nose kind of fell off of him and, you know, kind of got away, was kind of lost temporarily. But okay, everybody. At number 5, this might surprise some of you. At who is number 5? It might surprise some of you. But at number 5, we have from the hit Disney Channel series, which, believe it or not, is currently being rerun on Disney XD and I think Disney Channel itself. But at number 5, here on this Valentine's Day, on this special top 12 Valentine's animated comic book couples, at number 5, Kim Possible and Ron Stoppable. Now, I'm pretty sure some of you probably didn't see this coming, and if some of you were hoping it was going to be added, Well, here it is. And the reason I bring up Ron and Kim is because this is just another example of, like I mentioned earlier with several other, with a few other couples. This is just another example of building towards something, of really building towards something and giving it a good payoff. Kim and Ron, pretty much from the first episode onwards, pretty much a lot of fans were hoping Kim and Ron were going to get together. You saw hints here and there that, even though they were best friends since childhood, that you knew that there was an attraction as they got older. And I love how the fact that it built and built and built. It built and it built and it built until they got to the junior year. Till they got to what was seemingly going to be the final season of Kim Possible. Until they got to that moment, the build-up was great. I mean, like I said, you had the hints here and there. You had an actual episode kind of like dedicated to that possibility, even though the plot point was that Kim and Yugioh were under the control of this mood swing device or whatever it was. But still, to have that showcased, and then of course you had like the Christmas one where she kisses Ron on the cheek under a makeshift mistletoe. I mean, how much more do you have to build up something? And then when you get to and then here's the thing: how about a stitch in time? It's not just them saddened at the fact, as the plot shows you, that they could be separated, that the friendship and partnership or whatever is going to be strained. It's the fact that it's not just a friendship being torn apart; it's a possible relationship being torn apart, and the build up, and that helps again build up to what we eventually got in So the Drama, in the movie So the Drama, which I highly recommend you watch. It really built up to that moment, and it's just, to me, it was just one of those situations. It's just one, and again, it's just something that, like I mentioned a few others earlier, it's just one of these relationships, build-ups that has a great payoff. Because not only do you finally get, as a fan, not only do you finally get Kim and Ron together as a couple, but because fans loved seeing this and also loved the show that much, they petitioned and demanded, they petitioned Disney basically to say, they petitioned Disney to put another season out to conclude, to put out a final season that concluded the entire Kim Possible franchise. Basically a senior year season. And that's what they did. And the final 2 episodes really focused on that. Really also focused on the relationship, because they didn't know where they were going to go and how that was going to strain their relationship with each other. They didn't know what colleges they might end up in. How far apart they would be from each other, but still, that is what makes this relationship good. That's what made the build-up to this, have such a great payoff. And that is why, as I start the top 5 portion of this top 12 countdown, Alright, ladies and gentlemen, number 4 on the Valentine's Day animated cartoon comic book list. We have at number 4, and this is a tie at number 4. It's a tie between Mickey and Minnie Mouse, and you're not going to believe this, and you probably won't believe this, Bugs Bunny and Lola. That's right, Bugs and Lola. Now you might say, well, Bugs and Lola haven't been together as long as Mickey and Minnie, and that is true. But we're going to start with Mickey and Minnie first, and this is a relationship, a Valentine's Day fairy tale-like relationship that, my gosh, how long has it been now? 85 years? 85 years? I mean, they were basically created, they debuted the same year that the now late great Shirley Temple Black, or Shirley Temple, was born. They were created that year. They debuted around the year Shirley Temple was born, the now late great Shirley Temple. And to see that relationship last as long as it has, thus being the world's, if not history's, longest romantic courting, without any kind of marriage in sight, I don't know. I don't know what else to say. I mean, they've been in every animated feature you could think of. I mean, every animated short, I should say, that you could think of. They've been in mostly every animated feature, or animated featurette, like Christmas Carol, Runaway Brain, and maybe a few others. They've appeared together in numerous shows now, like House of Mouse, Mouseworks, Mickey Mouse Clubhouse, and the list goes on and on. They appeared together in the first animated feature film, even though it was direct to DVD and possibly Blu-ray later, hopefully Blu-ray later down the line. In the Three Musketeers, their take on it. They've appeared in Once Upon a Christmas. They've appeared in Twice Upon a Christmas. And like I say, in House of Mouse, in House of Villains, Snowed In. I mean, the list goes on of what these characters, of what Mickey and Minnie have appeared in together as a couple. And it's mind-boggling that for 85 years, and throughout these past, now going on 85 years, that never once was it ever considered by Disney, or even Walt Disney himself, or even Disney in general after his passing, it wasn't considered by any of his, relatives, like Roy Disney, like his brother Roy Disney, or even Roy Disney Jr., or anybody else, or even Michael Eisner or Frank Wells or whoever, that it was never ever considered to pair these two together, either as a married couple. I mean, to finally just say, you know what, it's been long enough, let's have them tie the knot. I mean, what are they waiting for? The 100th year of existence? That's going to be in like what? What's it going to be, like in 14 years? So you're telling me they're waiting 14 years to say, hey, let's have Mickey and Minnie finally tie the knot? I'll say this, what a way to celebrate 100 years, finally having them do it. But if there is a Mickey Mouse feature being developed for theatrical release, then I'm hoping among a lot of Mickey Mouse and Mickey and Minnie fans out there and supporters, I am hoping, in a sense, that Mickey and Minnie do at least tie the knot in that feature. It's got to be done. I mean, you have them hinting at it in several shorts and stuff. I mean, like in Mouseworks and House of Mouse, you had these mouse tales and stuff where you hinted at the fact that they were going to get married, or they were married at the end, or they were going to get married. I mean, you put them as a married couple in their adaptation of Christmas Carol. I mean, how many more hints, how many more times do you have to throw fans, your longtime devoted Disney fans, a bone or a hint or tease them until you finally say, let's take this courtship that's been going for 85 years, probably even more so by the time maybe the Mickey Mouse feature comes out. Let's finally get them to tie the knot. I mean, when is it going to happen? That's what I want to know. But the reason they are here at number 4 in the top 5 portion of this top 12 countdown is because of that longevity. It's because of the fact that they have lasted longer than any animated couple out there in existence. Any animated couple out there in existence. which is why they are at number 4 here on the top 12 countdown in the top 5 portion of it, but also why they're not alone. And this is why I have Lola and Bugs up there next to them. Now, sure, Lola and Bugs' relationship is only, 18 years old now? Going to be 20 years. It's going to be 20 years in like 2 years now. 2 years in 2016, it's going to be 20 years that they've been together. Officially, if you will, that they've officially been together. If you count both Space Jam and Looney Tunes back in action, as well as some of the comics and stuff like that. And webisodes, basically, if you count all that. It's like going to be 18 years this November, officially. So, and basically, when you look at both incarnations, both versions, if you will, the Space Jam version and even the Looney Tunes show version, their relationship works. It just works. In the Looney Tunes show, Lola is a complete woohoo at times, but Bugs accepts that. He's realized, you know what? She might be wacky, but she's mine. No one else is gonna take her, treat her the way I would, or care for her the way I would, and that's what makes this relationship so good. It kind of goes back to the whole Bonkers Fawn relationship that I mentioned earlier. Here's Lola, sort of like in the Bonkers role. She's willing to do whatever it takes to help Bugs out and take care of him and watch out for him. And Bugs, believe it or not, sort of in the Fawn role, where it's like eventually he does accept her for who she is. And it's like, hey, she may be wacky, but hey, at least she cares for me. At least she wants to be there for me. And to me, that is just tremendous. It's what makes him really unique, and it really makes him a popular pair. All right, number 3 on this countdown. Number 3 is a pairing, is a Valentine's pairing that that if they had decided to continue this series, if they had decided to do a feature film on this series, you would pretty much say they have no choice but to really cement this pairing together. And of course I'm talking about what you see in front of you, Baloo and Rebecca from Tailspin. What more can you say about these two? A lot of people, even critics and the writers themselves, compare them as being the Sam Malone and Rebecca Donaldson of Cheers. They're basically the Tailspin equivalent of those characters. And you can pretty much see why. But this is what's unique about Baloo and Rebecca. They may have those kind of similarities, but here's the thing. They actually do care about each other. Yes, just like in Cheers, Sam and Rebecca were employer and employee, or partners, or whatever you want to call it. Here, it's the same way, employer-employee, but you kind of tell that they look at each other as more than just that. You can pretty much see that. You can pretty much see that they look at each other as more than that. And there are several episodes, probably more than I can even count sometimes, that prove that. You have one episode where Baloo is willing to lose weight to go to a ball, to the pilot's, I think it's called the pilot's ball with Rebecca. Well, because he needs to take a pilot. Anyway, but he's willing to go that far. He's willing to go so far to keep his promise to Rebecca that he ends up accidentally inside a Thimbrian prison camp. Yeah. And true, even though he ends up there by accident, he does end up accomplishing his goal of losing weight. And Rebecca shows appreciativeness. Alright, closing out this countdown at number 1. This should not come as a surprise to anybody, and you might say I'm a little biased about it. But you know what? After everything this couple has gone through the cartoons, and mostly through the comics up till recently, all I can say is this pairing deserves to be number 1. And of course I'm talking about Sonic and Sally. That's right, I'm talking about Sonic and Sally from Sonic the Hedgehog. I mean, what more can you say about this pairing? I mean, you saw basically that they cared about each other in the two season run of the Saturday AM series, and definitely saw that come to fruition, full circle, if you will, in the Doomsday Project episode finale. And you kind of see how they built towards it sometimes throughout all the episodes, all 26. You kind of see how they built towards it several times. So that, to me, really emphasizes why they are at number 1. But another reason as well is you look at the comics, and despite how many writers have gone through this, have wrote for this comic, it's like this pairing has gone through so much, it's not funny. They've had their ups, they've had their downs, they've had their controversies. It's like this pairing has gone through so much that it's almost like what they've gone through, in my opinion, is the equivalent of what Marvel would have put Spider-Man and Mary Jane through in their time together. And they've been together longer than Sonic and Sally, comic book wise. Same with Superman and Lois. Again, from my opinion. But to me, there is no doubt, in my opinion, that Sonic and Sally really deserve this position at number 1. I mean, again, you take a look at what they've gone through mostly through the comics, and with things like Endgame, the 125th, what they went through building up to like 122, 123, 124, and then 125, the home arc, and afterwards, slowly building back up to what we got and started to kind of hint around and get at with like from I guess 213, 214 or something like that. Until recently, or 214. Well, not recently, but what we started to get starting like around with issues 213 and 14, and up to about 222 and 225, and then kind of culminating to what we have now. It's like, what more do you have to say about these two? What more does this pairing have to go through? I mean, now, according to a lot of fans, they're back to being just friends, which means if it's still possible, again, we're just going to build back up to what they were, unless there's a twist thrown at us that we don't see coming. We're just going to be slowly building back up to what we had before. And I know, despite how you feel about the guy, Ian Flynn knows that has to happen. Ian Flynn can come out and say, okay, ladies and gentlemen, at number 2 on this list, it's a tie, second tie we've had on this top 12 list, but it's a tie between 2 Hanna-Barbera couples. That's right, 2 Hanna-Barbera couples. One is a pairing, a coupling, that fans, even to this day, want to have supported, including myself, have supported and hope to see again. In fact, if you watch the Blu-ray of Scooby-Doo and the Samurai Sword, And when they're talking about Zoink Point and they're doing that little advertisement for Zoink Points, you might notice that one of the computer screens that they advertise, they're talking about it on, one of the computer screens, like let's say messaging, kind of like a Facebook thing, has Shaggy and Daphne on there. What more do you need? What more do you need to see? You know what I'm saying? And that is exactly why fans support Shaggy and Daphne, and that is why they are tied at number 2 with the other couple I will talk about in a second. But you see, Shaggy and Daphne, the reason this pairing, this shipping, this romantic duo is something that fans support and are behind is because it was established back in the 1980s. I know that's kind of nostalgic, but it was basically 30 years ago, going to be 31 officially in the fall of this year. But it was a little over 30 and a half years ago, that when Daphne was brought back to be part of the team in this all-new Scooby-Doo Scrappy-Doo show, thus the following season, which was 30 years ago, like I said, the following season, which was 30 years ago, if you will, which was renamed the new Scooby-Doo Mysteries. And then the following season, which you had as 13 Goes to Scooby-Doo, if what you didn't see in a lot of those episodes, and some of those episodes did not indicate to you that Hanna-Barbera originally planned to put them together, I don't know what does. In fact, here's an even bigger thing. You can check it out here on my YouTube page. But in my big Hanna-Barbera book that I have, they have this big old splash picture that they did of all the cast of all the characters they've had. This was done like I think in the early 90s something. And in this crowded picture, you had Shaggy and Daphne right next to each other. Yeah, you had Scooby and Scrappy, but they were on the other side of the picture. But you had Shaggy and Daphne on this side. And there was no Velma, there was no Fred. It was Shaggy, Daphne, and the dogs. That was it. But Shaggy and Daphne was on one side next to each other. So this kind of tells you that Hanna-Barbera originally had plans to put them together. And that's why initially, in the eyes of some, like myself, why they brought Daphne back. Not just because of the fact that, of course, she was the third most popular character on the show, or in the franchise, but the fact that I think the writers and the creative staff at that time at Hanna-Barbera realized they had a potential gold mine when it comes to romantic pairings. That this could be the next real romantic pairing couple in the Hanna-Barbera universe. Which is why they are at number 2, along with this other Hanna-Barbera pairing, Yogi. Alright, closing out this countdown at number 1. This should not come as a surprise to anybody, and you might say I'm a little biased about it. But you know what? After everything this couple has gone through the cartoons, and mostly through the comics up till recently, all I can say is this pairing deserves to be number 1. And of course I'm talking about Sonic and Sally. That's right, I'm talking about Sonic and Sally from Sonic the Hedgehog. I mean, what more can you say about this pairing? I mean, you saw basically that they cared about each other in the two season run of the Saturday AM series, and definitely saw that come to fruition, full circle, if you will, in the Doomsday Project episode finale. And you kind of see how they built towards it sometimes throughout all the episodes, all 26. You kind of see how they built towards it several times. So that, to me, really emphasizes why they are at number 1. But another reason as well is you look at the comics, and despite how many writers have gone through this, have wrote for this comic, it's like this pairing has gone through so much, it's not funny. They've had their ups, they've had their downs, they've had their controversies. It's like this pairing has gone through so much that it's almost like what they've gone through, in my opinion, is the equivalent of what Marvel would have put Spider-Man and Mary Jane through in their time together. And they've been together longer than Sonic and Sally, comic book wise. Same with Superman and Lois. Again, from my opinion. But to me, there is no doubt, in my opinion, that Sonic and Sally really deserve this position at number one. I mean, again, you take a look at what they've gone through mostly through the comics, and with things like Endgame, the 125th, what they went through building up to like 122, 123, 124, and then 125, the home arc, and afterwards, slowly building back up to what we got and, started to kind of hint around and get at with like from I guess 213, 214 or something like that, until recently, or 214, well, not recently, but what we started to get starting like around with issues 213 and 14 and up to about 222 and 225 and then, kind of culminating to what we have now. It's like, what more do you have to say about these two? What more does this pairing have to go through? I mean, now, according to a lot of fans, they're back to being just friends, which means if it's still possible, again, we're just going to build back up to what they were, unless there's a twist thrown at us that we don't see coming. We're just going to be slowly building back up to what we had before. And I know, despite how you feel about the guy, Ian Flynn knows that has to happen. Ian Flynn can come out and say, it's not going to happen anymore, or it's not going to happen for the time being. Yeah, you could say that. How many times have people like him said that in comics? And yet, what they say is not going to happen happens? The thing is, this pairing has gone through so much. It's not funny, and who knows how much more they're going to go through. So, despite what you may think, despite the fact that you may say I'm showing favoritism because I'm a fan and a supporter of this pairing, it doesn't matter. Sonic and Sally deserve to be at number one on this countdown, and that's all I'm going to say. I hope you enjoyed this Top 12 Valentine's Day Animation Comic Book Couples Countdown, or Valentine's Day Animation Comic Book Countdown, Comic Book Couples Countdown. I hope you guys enjoyed it.